Welcome to today's Explainer. It's July 1st, 2026, and we are officially kicking off the second half of the year. If you take a step back and look at the morning news briefs across technology, finance, energy, and global affairs, there is a massive, undeniable theme emerging right now. We are living through what you could call the Great Modernization. Today, we're taking a snapshot of our world as this incredible global push to build the digital and physical infrastructure for the next decade really kicks into high gear. So that brings us to the big question. What is actually driving the world right now? If we completely strip away the daily noise, the short-term market swings, and all that immediate political chatter, what are the underlying currents truly moving global markets, our industries, and even our daily lives? Well, let's break it down. To do that efficiently, we've synthesized today's vast news landscape into 5 core chapters. We'll start with focusing on the fundamentals, move right into the AI infrastructure era, explore powering the AI economy, look at work in everyday life, and finally, zoom out to the global geopolitical picture. All right, let's jump into Chapter 1, focusing on the fundamentals as the second half of 2026 begins. Right now, we're seeing a really fascinating shift in investor psychology. As we start July, the markets are actively ignoring a lot of the short-term noise. Instead, they are laser-focused on core economic indicators. It's kind of this cautious optimism grounded in reality. Investors are tracking employment data, inflation expectations, and sustained manufacturing investment. And of course, everyone is bracing for the upcoming corporate earnings season, mainly to see if all these massive tech investments are actually paying off on the balance sheet. Meanwhile, amidst all this economic watchfulness, the United States is rapidly accelerating preparations for its 250th anniversary. It's this incredible backdrop of historic milestones playing out right alongside some very modern challenges. For instance, Independence Day travel is ramping up toward what looks like a record-breaking weekend. Yet, at the exact same time, everyday Americans are grappling with persistent housing affordability challenges. It's the ultimate modern duality, right? Saving up for fireworks while trying to figure out how to make rent. And that practical reality leads us directly into our second chapter, the AI infrastructure era. We're officially moving beyond the experiment. Think about it this way. We are no longer in the phase where artificial intelligence is just a novelty or some fun beta test. Enterprise AI has firmly entered its infrastructure era. That means the primary capital investments, the real big money, are flowing directly into the physical and digital foundations required to actually run these massive AI systems at scale. We are literally building the roads and bridges of the new digital age. When you look at exactly where that massive capital is going, some very clear dominant trends emerge. The biggest slices of the pie are being devoured by AI data centers, cloud platforms expanding their global capacity, and semiconductors, where demand remains just exceptionally aggressive. But we're also seeing huge investments in operational software, because it's not just about building the absolute smartest AI anymore. It's about building the practical systems that allow everyday businesses to actually use it. The crucial takeaway here is that operational reliability has become the ultimate competitive advantage. Enterprise customers want predictable operating costs and models that compete on sheer efficiency. Whether it's maturing AI governance platforms or edge computing, which just means running the AI closer to where the data is actually collected rather than in some distant cloud, businesses demand that their AI works safely and cost-effectively, day in and day out. But, as you might guess, building all these massive data centers creates a very physical, very urgent problem. That brings us to Chapter 3, powering the AI economy and finding the fuel for this engine. This creates a really complex dynamic we're calling the AI energy effect. On one side, you have this surging electricity demand driven by these massive new data centers, and it's colliding head-on with extreme summer heat that is already placing intense pressure on power grids. The demand forecasts just keep going up. So, in response, we're seeing a forced modernization. We're talking massive nationwide grid projects that are fundamentally reshaping long-term utility planning from the ground up. Energy security and grid resilience are receiving historic levels of investment right now. We're seeing accelerated deployment of battery storage, incredibly strong investments in renewable energy, and a massive push to finally build out transmission lines. Interestingly, nuclear energy is also receiving serious renewed policy attention as the only stable baseline power source truly capable of feeding this AI-driven future. It's a complete overhaul of how we generate and move power. Okay, let's step away from the power grids and the data centers for a minute. Chapter 4 brings us to work and everyday life. How does all this macro-level modernization actually impact us at the human level? If you take a cross-section of mid-2026 culture and work, some fascinating patterns show up. Hybrid work has officially stabilized, and automation is actively reshaping our office workflows. But culturally, even while AI remakes our tools, people are still flocking to fiercely human entertainment. World Cup knockout football is completely dominating global conversations, and the podcast creator economy is as strong as ever. Over in the workforce, employers are pivoting heavily towards skills-based hiring. Yes, they absolutely want AI skills, but they want to see practical application over traditional college degrees. So, what does it take for you to succeed in this kind of environment? There is a very clear playbook emerging for the modern knowledge worker. First, you have to integrate AI. For developers, for instance, AI coding assistants are now the standard, they're not a luxury. Second, demonstrate measurable productivity gains. Businesses want to see the real return on investment for these tools. Third, and honestly most importantly, maintain human oversight. The technology isn't running itself. And finally, embrace continuous learning. Your long-term adaptability is absolutely your greatest competitive advantage right now. Finally, let's zoom out to the widest lens we have. Chapter 5, the global geopolitical picture. Because all of this technological and economic progress, it's unfolding on a very complex world stage. Based on the morning briefings, these are the primary geopolitical focus areas currently being monitored globally. Middle East diplomacy remains right at the top of the list, alongside maintaining shipping stability through the absolutely critical Strait of Hormuz. Over in Europe, NATO is closely monitoring evolving security conditions, while Ukraine and Russia continue their long-range military operations. Meanwhile, China is actively encouraging diplomatic engagement on the world stage. It's a carefully balanced, constantly shifting map of diplomatic and strategic priorities. And this brings us to a really fascinating juxtaposition. On one hand, you have these evolving geopolitical tensions, various democratic governments navigating rocky leadership transitions, and growing international pressure around climate resilience. It is, by all accounts, a landscape of high uncertainty. Yet the economic reaction tells a very different story. Global supply chains are continuing to demonstrate remarkable resilience. Global trade is adapting, and international investment reflects a very measured optimism. The world economy is finding ways to just keep moving forward, even when the geopolitical waters get pretty choppy. Which leads us to the ultimate takeaway from today's data. If you remember just one thing from this explainer, let it be this summary of our July 2026 snapshot. Across technology, energy, and government, the dominant long-term trend remains modernization, building the digital and physical infrastructure needed for the AI-driven economy of the coming decade. We are literally laying the concrete and running the fiber optics for the future right this very second. So I want to leave you with a question to chew on today. You've seen how the macroeconomy, the huge tech giants, and global utilities are relentlessly building their infrastructure for this new era. The question is, how are you building your own? Whether it's upgrading your personal skill set, adapting your business workflows, or just staying fiercely informed, the great modernization is already here. Make sure you don't get left behind. Thanks for joining me to break it all down today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.